is absolutely fantastic to be here, especially among such impressive and fantastic colleagues. It's just absolutely an honor to be here. My name is Jim McCorkle, and I am the founder and CEO of an organization called College Possible, formerly Admission Possible. And we are a nonprofit organization that helps low-income students get into college and graduate from college. And part of the reason that I decided to found this organization was that I actually grew up in a low-income family myself, and I experienced many of the challenges that low-income kids face in getting to college. My parents didn't finish high school, let alone get to college, and so I also saw the difficult lives that they had as a result of not having a college degree. And so now, almost 12 years later, we're incredibly proud of what we've built in the Twin Cities, Milwaukee, and Omaha. We're now serving nearly 9,000 students. And we've developed a powerful vision for our organization, and we think eventually for the country. And that is that one day the educational opportunities available to children will be determined solely by their talent, motivation, and effort. So what is the problem that our organization is trying to solve? Simply put, it's that there is an enormous gap in this country between who earns a four-year college degree and who doesn't. So if you look at this chart, you can see this is tracking who earns a four-year college degree by the age of 24, which is essentially giving a student 6 years from high school graduation in order to earn their four-year college degree. The top line represents the upper income quartile. That's families making about $108,000 a year or more. And you can see they're earning a college degree at a rate over 80%. By contrast, if you look at the lower bar, the lower income quartile, these are students from families that are earning about $38,000 a year or less, and they're earning college degrees at a rate of about 8%. So in other words, in 2012, in this country, upper income students are now 10 times more likely to earn a college degree than their low income counterparts. And at College Possible, we just think that that is absolutely outrageous. It's not fair to those kids, those low-income kids, and it's not right for our country. The surest pathway out of poverty is a college degree. And in an increasingly competitive international economy, this country is going to need every well-trained worker it can possibly get its hands on. So the question becomes, what really drives this problem? And it's complex, but one of the key variables is that most low-income students lack a caring adult to guide them through the process of getting into college, staying in college, and graduating. And in middle-class families, that's typically the parent. So the question is, how do you craft a solution to such a complex and vexing problem? Well, it turns out it's actually remarkably difficult to help a student who wouldn't get to college otherwise get to college and graduate. It takes an enormous amount of time on task because it's a difficult thing to accomplish. So the problem with most existing efforts is that they're either not intense enough and therefore can't achieve the desired outcomes, or if they do have the intensity, they're too expensive to scale. And so we think that our model helps answer both of those questions because our model is very intense and yet it's very low cost. And that's driven by our key entrepreneurial insight, which was that we are the first organization in the country to harness the spirit of national service through AmeriCorps. So we attract recent college graduates and then pair them up with low-income students who are really close in age to them. And so there's a near-peer mentoring relationship that forms. And we are able to deliver outstanding results, but the cost is so low because the AmeriCorps members are essentially volunteering their time. Our model is about 1/7 the cost of the most similar federally funded program called Upward Bound. So how does this model actually work? We have two main aspects to our program. We have the College Access Program, which is focused on getting students to prepare for, earn admission to, and afford college. And then we have our College Success Program, which is focused on helping students persist in college and graduate once they're there. At the center of our model is the AmeriCorps member that I mentioned. We call them a coach. You might sort of metaphorically think of them like a middle-class parent. They're there to help guide the student through, on the access side, helping them prepare for the ACT exam, helping make sure they get a good college application in and done on time. Those of you who are middle-class parents, you may have done this with your own children. Sometimes it's a kick in the seat of the pants. And then when they get to college, it's helping them navigate the obstacles that they face. So what is our direct impact? Does this model work? Well, we're incredibly proud of the results that we have achieved as an organization. We focus like a laser beam on results. We've had 3 independent evaluations done of our work. And you can see here on the left that our students are enrolling in college at a rate of 94%. This is significantly better than their low-income peers. And in fact, it's even better than all-income students as a whole. We're especially proud of our results on graduation. So this on the right-hand side, this is our 6-year graduation rate for 4-year schools. Our rate is now 57%, which, as you can see, is more than 4 times the rate other low-income students are achieving. Last year, a Harvard study that used a quasi-experimental evaluation design compared students who went through our program to very similar students who didn't get to go through our program, and it showed that we're more than doubling a student's chance of enrolling in a 4-year college. We're in the 2nd year now with that same scholar, a person named Chris Avery from the Kennedy School of Government, working on a randomized control trial evaluation. So we're an organization that's incredibly focused on measurement and results. Increasingly, we're working to generate more widespread impact, and I don't have time to go through every part of this slide right now, but perhaps during the question and answer question. But the one I do want to highlight is what our social return on investment is. Many people in this room are very well versed in the idea of social return on investment. An independent analysis showed that the return on investment in our model yields over a 300% return. And this is driven mainly by the fact that low-income students who go to college will earn about $1 million more over their lifetime and therefore are in a position to contribute much more to our tax base. And to a lesser extent, they're less likely to be incarcerated or need costly social services. So what is our scaling strategy? Well, a number of years ago, our board of directors took a step back and said, if we're an organization that's achieving unprecedented results, as good a results as there are in our field, and we're doing it at this small fraction of the cost of our competitors, why wouldn't we scale? And so we were able to secure the pro bono help of McKinsey and Company, and over a 12-month period, we built out a strategic plan for growth. You can see where we started originally almost 12 years ago with just 35 students back when we were operating out of a spare bedroom in my apartment, and where we are today in 3 cities, Twin Cities, Milwaukee, Omaha, now reaching almost 9,000 students, an annual budget of nearly $6 million. And our plan is to get to at least 10 cities and reach at least 20,000 students. This gives you a little bit of a look at some of the cities and states that we're looking at. In our business plan, we have detailed criteria that we use to determine which communities are going to be the best fit for us, and we could certainly go into those at more length during the question and answer session. So what's the financial model? Our program costs about $2 million, requires about $2 million in private sector funding over the first 3 years to enter a new community. We just this year opened a new office in Omaha, and we actually got to $2.6 million in local private sector support. So that allowed us to accelerate our growth there. In addition, we're building a $10 million national growth fund, and the purpose of that fund is to help accelerate this growth in a variety of ways, which again, we can talk about in some more detail during the question and answers. We're really proud and pleased to announce that this year we were selected to join the New Profit portfolio. They've become a major investor in our work and have made a commitment of $1 million toward our national growth campaign. So we really believe as an organization that we are ready to scale. We've increasingly received significant national attention from Ashoka, from New Profit. We've won national awards of excellence from some of our colleagues in the National College Access Network and some of those kinds of groups. And that comes from spending 12 years really refining our work, evaluating it. We've proved that our model is replicable in 3 different cities. There are independent replications of our model in 3 other cities. We have a senior leadership team that's ready to do this work, signed on to do it. We have a strong record of financial management. And indeed, even the President of the United States, President Barack Obama, said of our work when he was talking about the most impressive, effective, scalable nonprofits in the country that College Possible operates in just 2 states now. So imagine if it was 10 or 20 or 50. And indeed, that is our vision, and we feel that with your help, both strategic and financial, we could be in a position one day, or our model could, to reach every student in America who needs and deserves our help. Thank you.
I think I have a green light, yes. Jim, thank you very much. You have a question from Jim. Can you talk a little bit, Milwaukee was your second site.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that? You applied to Omaha, and what's next for the next 10?
Well, that is a great question, and we learned a lot. When we did Milwaukee, we also had McKinsey helping us with that. And so we did a strategic plan that was based almost entirely on analysis. And so we sort of picked Milwaukee. And I've jokingly said when I started traveling to Milwaukee, I could barely spell Milwaukee. And it sort of sounded like I was coming there saying to the people who lived in Milwaukee that we searched the whole country over and you're the city in the worst shape and most in need of our help. And so essentially it was like we were pushing our way in. And so what we learned was that's a really bad way to do this. And so in our second strategic planning process, we talked to Teach for America and City Year and Year Up and a whole bunch of very successful initiatives. And one of the things we heard over and over is you need to be pulled in, not push your way in. And so what we decided was it was less important to be choosy about which city we go into, and instead to make sure that there's a lot of need in that city and that there's local champions who want to bring us in. And so that's how we got to Omaha. We have a person there named Wally Weitz, who's a successful business person who was very connected in the education community, and he was able to help us assemble both our partners and much of the funding. And we have a retired CEO in Portland, Oregon, who's doing a similar thing, and a CEO of a different company in Philadelphia who's also doing that. So we learned some of those things, and then I could go on for a long time, but I'll wrap it up with this. But we also learned that we needed more back office support. You know, at the time that we created Milwaukee, the Milwaukee site, we didn't have a national office. We were essentially running it out of our Twin Cities office. So I was both the executive director of the Twin Cities and then trying to kind of keep track of Milwaukee at the same time. And so one of the things we've done in the interim is to create a national office that we think is well staffed and has adequate capacity to support the addition of new sites moving forward.
Great, thanks, Jim. Very exciting program, and congratulations on a lot of the success thus far. You have an ambitious fundraising goal over the next couple of years, and the work is really funded mostly out of philanthropy. Can you talk a little bit about how you've structured the balance between the local fundraising and the national fundraising and how that's staffed and supported so that you can sustain that over time?
Well, I think that's a great question because it is true that we're primarily a private sector driven organization. About a quarter of our revenue comes from AmeriCorps and other government sources. We think the vast majority of the support is going to come from the site level. And so our model is that we hire an executive director who is primarily externally facing. I would say about 2/3 an externally facing person to do fundraising, community relationships, partnering, things of that nature, so that we have a strong fundraising presence in the local community. However, we do also want to build a national growth fund that I mentioned, and that's really to accelerate the growth. You know, if we do what we did in Omaha, where it takes a year or so to go identify $2.6 million in local money before you've even set foot on the ground, it really slows down your scaling ability. So our hope is that we're hoping to work soon with Sea Change Capital Partners to develop, among other things, a case for a $10 million, we'll see what the analysis yields, but some kind of significant growth fund that will help us then seed some of those sites and cover some of the back office costs so that local sites have more resources to dedicate to their own growth, so our existing sites can continue to grow as fast as possible.
Jim, once again, very, very strong presentation. My question, one of the risks you identified in your plan is that if AmeriCorps funding decreased significantly, that would affect your business model. So can you talk about that? And I guess the second part is, would you think of transitioning to, I guess, more of a staffing model rather than the churn of the AmeriCorps model?
What's a really good and totally appropriate question, given our current situation with government funding for virtually everything. There's reason to believe that AmeriCorps could be vulnerable, though most of the groups that advocate for AmeriCorps actually believe it's likely under either President Obama's second term or President Romney's term that AmeriCorps would still exist. But nonetheless, we are working really hard right now on a contingency plan for what we would do if we didn't have AmeriCorps funding, and New Profit is helping us develop a detailed contingency plan. The thrust of it would be, though, that we would continue to use recent college graduates, because we think there's a real magic in that near-peer mentorship. We just wouldn't have the government funding to support it. So in the current model, about a quarter of the revenue is AmeriCorps funding, the rest is private. So if AmeriCorps were to be either reduced or eliminated, it would require us to replace some of that government money with more private sector funding, which I think wouldn't be a killer, but it would be a drag on our growth.
Jim, can I ask one more question? Can you talk a little bit about your strategy or the role you want to play in policy change and how you integrate what you see to be a game changer for young people into sort of the national standards?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because that was one of the ones, when you only have 10 minutes, you talk about as fast as you can, and it's hard to get it all in there. But one of the things on the slide about having more widespread impact that I think I'm really excited about, we're in the very early stages of it, because we're only in 3 cities. But the preliminary evidence is really good, and I think when we're in 5 cities, or maybe 7 cities, or maybe 10 cities, and we have some randomized controlled trial evaluation evidence to show that this model is now working in multiple communities, with multiple kinds of leaders, with all different kinds of students, I do think that would put us in a credible position to say at the policy level, to the federal government, which is now spending about $1 billion on what are called the TRIO programs, which I hate to ever denigrate those programs. I'm glad they exist, but they're not as effective or as efficient as they could be. And so I think that the future for our model, probably not for us as an organization, but for our model, would be to say, what if we could marry our approach of using recent college graduates who are essentially volunteering most of their energy to this? If you can do it at 1/7 the cost, this is the future of our politics, I think, is to look for government solutions that are cheaper, more effective, so that you can actually achieve more with no fewer dollars. So that's kind of the direction I'm hoping that we will go over the next several years, over a longer period.
Thank you.
If we've got some time, I was just wondering when you...
I think we have 2 minutes and 18 seconds.
Okay. Every AmeriCorps student I've ever met has been the most impressive person I've ever met in some way. So let me turn that around and say, what's a red flag for you when you're trying to create this, hire people to create this near-peer mentorship relationship?
Well, you're putting your finger on the real art of the work, because there's many AmeriCorps programs that actually don't get that great of results, and a lot of times it's because they just can't find the very best Corps members. I think the best in our field at it is Teach for America. They have an ability to go find some of the very best and brightest in all of America. They have, they're a larger employer than many Fortune 500 companies. So the art form is to determine what exactly you're looking for and generate a really significant pool of applicants. So in our organization, we always aim to have at least 5 applicants for every position. So we have lots of people to choose from. And then we have a really detailed screening process. So it takes the better part of a day. Candidates come in for the better part of a day and go through a whole variety of exercises that we use to screen them. And one of the things that I'll say on this that is really powerful in our model is we just recently are starting to have kids who went through our program as students, went off to college and graduated, and now are coming back to be AmeriCorps members with us. So these are students who were low-income students once themselves. In the Twin Cities, it's about 20% of the Corps. And there's nothing more powerful than seeing somebody who can go back into a classroom where they once were a student and say, I once was in your shoes, and I didn't think I could make it to college, and then I followed this program, and it changed my whole life. And that's really powerful in the larger sense, going back to the policy arena, because The other really large value, and this is something I think Teach for America, again, is leading us on, City Year does a great job too, is these corps members, when they're done, have learned how to be better citizens, and that's going to just strengthen our whole sector, really strengthen our whole society. I think that's it. Thank you.